Through Creativity, How to Use Your Talents for More Creative Leadership, presented by Dr. Lynne Levesque. Today's webinar will be about an hour, and it's sponsored by Supervisory Skills Questionnaire. This tool equips supervisors with the skills they need to tackle the everyday challenges they face in the workplace. A trainer favorite for more than 15 years, this combination assessment, workbook, and half-day workshop targets 5 vital skills that shape a supervisor's work life. My name is Sarah Schaefer, and I will moderate today's webinar. If you have any questions, please type them into the questions box. We'll be answering these questions as they come in live at the end of the presentation or as I follow up by email. Dr. Lynne Levesque is a leadership and creativity consultant based in Boston, Massachusetts. Prior to launching her consulting and training practice, she was a vice president at Bank of America. Lynne also spent several years as a senior researcher at the Harvard Business School. She is author of Breakthrough Creativity, Achieving Top Performance Using the 8 Creative Talents, and the Breakthrough Creativity Profile, as well as several cases and articles. Welcome, Lynne, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Sarah, and I'm very glad to be here with you all, and welcome to all of you who are participating in today's webinar. It's great to see so many people who have chosen to spend some time exploring my favorite topics of creativity and leadership. And today we're going to be reviewing the 8 creative talents, and then I'm going to show you all how the Breakthrough Creativity framework can be used not only for identifying your creative strengths, but also for addressing the many challenges of leadership, which is why, according to the IBM Global CEO study, creativity is the most important leadership quality. And I hope by the end of today's session you will understand how important creativity is to high-performance leadership performance. The focus will be primarily on you as a leader, most broadly defined, but obviously you can use this information with your coaching clients, with programs for developing leaders, with your employees, with your teams, and in training sessions to help others identify their creative strengths and then realize the power of those strengths for being a more effective leader. I do want to preface today saying that I have a slight cold, and hopefully it won't interfere with our conversation today, but if you hear me either sniffling or coughing, please forgive me. So there's much to be gained from a leadership perspective from exploring our creative potential, especially if we think of creativity not just as an end, but as a means to many different ends. And those creative ends come in the form of more inventive decisions, strategies, products, and solutions at work, better designs, process improvements, and breakthrough technologies. Also through a heightened ability to communicate and motivate. But I think the most important thing, or one of the other pieces of the puzzle of creativity, is the power it brings with other benefits. Because being creative builds self-esteem. With practice, you build confidence in your creativity, and in the process become even more creative. You're ready to try new things. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Developing your creative potential also strengthens your capacity to be more open, flexible, and resilient. All important skills for dealing with the unstructured, ill-defined, and ambiguous challenges and complexities that leaders face in our ever-changing world. So creativity can thus provide a foundation for leaders to be more comfortable with risk, experimentation, and ambiguity. Now, there's no question that the benefits of creativity are far-ranging. The problem is that too often leaders don't gain these benefits because they don't see themselves as creative, or don't know how to become more creative, or how to bring out the creativity of the people around them. Too often creativity is seen as magical, mystical, or belonging to a select few. Creativity is definitely misunderstood. That's because there's a lot of confusing and conflicting information about creativity. It's hard to see yourself as creative if you measure yourself against geniuses like Einstein, Edison, Michelangelo. Or you may believe that creativity is only about thinking outside the box, or off the wall, or that it's a right brain thing and you are definitely left brain, whatever that means. Or you may have taken a creativity test and didn't score very high, or were told by a teacher that you weren't very creative. Now this is a problem. Everyone's being asked to be more creative, to think and do things differently, and if you don't see yourself as creative, you and your organization may be missing its many benefits. So in this webinar, we're going to explore creativity, see its power for higher performance as a leader, and then apply this new knowledge to leadership development programs and initiatives. And hopefully we'll have a little time at the end for some questions that I will try to answer. So let's take the temperature to see where we stand regarding your belief about yourself as a creative leader. Sarah's going to open up the poll, and you're going to fill in the blank of selecting one. Do you think you are a very creative leader? Are you a somewhat creative leader? Are you not sure if you're a creative leader? Or have you never thought of yourself as a creative leader? So go ahead and take the poll, please. You are, because of technology constraints, you're not able to see the results, but I can. And I can see that we're getting some great participation, with many of you believing that you're a somewhat creative leader, and a few wondering about what it means to be a creative leader. So one of the interesting things is that in my research workshops and classes, I found that the older the audience, the less they see themselves as creative. And what I'm seeing is that, and I have also seen that the younger the audience, the more creative they believe they are. So obviously we have a audience today that is at least very young at heart. So I think we are pretty much complete with this. So let's move on to the next points that I want to make. The Breakthrough Creativity Framework is based upon three key principles. One of the reasons you may not see yourself as creative and aren't sure is that there are so many different theories and approaches to creativity. So I want to explain what the Breakthrough Creativity Framework is based upon. It's based upon, the first belief is that we are all creative. And since that is indeed the case, then we need a definition of creativity that is broad enough to encompass all the many different ways we can be creative. Because, in fact, no matter what you've heard, there is no one best way to be creative. There are a wide variety of ways, and no one way is the ideal way. And what I want to talk about today is, tell us, how do you define creativity? I want to get into this definition of creativity in deeper, because one of the reasons you may not see yourself as creative is that you have a different definition of creativity than perhaps what we're going to be addressing today. So using your chat window, would you share your definition of what creativity it means to you? When you were filling out that response about how creative you were as a leader, how were you defining creativity? Thinking outside the box, says Janet. Always thinking outside the box or coming up with new ideas. A very common definition. Success within the box. I like that one. The creativity is coming up with something new, not shooting down any ideas, thinking beyond the limits, a new and different way to think about ideas, creative problem solving. We also get some of that typical, it's about thinking off the wall, coming up with off the wall ideas, being artistic. I've actually heard somebody tell me that they weren't creative because they didn't come up with they weren't free form, they were not nonlinear. They think of creativity as being a right brain activity. So as you've heard, there are many, many different definitions of creativity. and not all of them are inclusive. Here's a new one, how to ruffle some feathers. Knowing how to ruffle feathers, that's a great definition for creativity. But in not all of these definitions that we've talked about so far are as inclusive as they should be to recognize that we are all creative, just differently creative. So in this webinar, we'll be using the Breakthrough Creativity definition that is based upon my experience, the teaching, and my research, including the latest findings from neuroscientists who are studying the brain and creativity. That definition is that creativity is the ability to consciously produce different and valuable results. We're not all alike in our creativity, but that's because there are so many different results that can be called creative. You may not have developed your creativity to the same degree as others have, but it's there and it can be developed. Just a few points about this definition. The results don't have to be tangible. They can be intangible, like creating an open and safe culture where new ideas are welcome, resolving conflict in different ways, leading a team to reach greater heights. However, the results do need to be different, and that is different from what you've done before. Your results don't have to be original to the world or to change the course of business or science. A few really do. For some, of course, who exhibit what could be called transformational or groundbreaking creativity, like Einstein or Steve Jobs, they do. But for most people, creativity is a bit more down to earth and still incredibly, incredibly important. But just being different isn't enough. To be considered creative, your results must also be valuable, meaning useful and appropriate. The results must satisfy the needs of the situation or the challenge, which could be your need to express yourself. You may not always be successful in creating these different and valuable results the first time. Being creative also involves learning from mistakes, building on them, and through the trial and error, coming up with an answer that really resolves the situation. Eventually, however, the results have to work and solve the problem or challenge. Otherwise, it's just going to end up being an interesting idea. The final definition or word I want to define better is conscious. You need to know yourself well enough to be able to consciously call up your creativity whenever you need it. Otherwise, creativity could be just a flash in the pan. So you'll notice that this definition might encompass what some people call innovation. I believe individuals are creative and organizations are innovative. They build on the creativity of their employees. In other words, innovation is a group activity or process that organizations can design, and creativity is something that each one of us has. Let's go on here focusing on creativity, and if you have any questions about this definition, we can handle them in the Q&A session. So, while this is not a webinar about leadership, I do want to make sure we're clear about at least the perspective that I come from, because there is many different definitions of leadership as there are about creativity. I like the model that my colleagues Bob Kaplan and Rob Kaiser have developed, the versatile leader. Their research shows that high-performing leaders have versatility, the ability to flex into different modes given the context of the situation and the person or persons they are dealing with. Leaders who are high-performing leaders need to be both strategic and operational at different times, and enabling and forceful or directing at different times. And yes, this looks a lot like situational leadership, but it's taken it up a notch or two to where you're looking at the not only individual needs, but also the context and the organizational situation. So strategic here means long-term, taking the long view, and operational is very focused on execution, short-term results. Forceful is taking the lead, setting direction, and enabling is creating conditions for others to lead. High-performance leaders need all four characteristics. It's not an either-or situation. You need both, or need all four, sorry. Both of them, right. So creativity and leadership require perception and judgment, action and reflection. When you really study creativity, you'll see that to consciously produce different and valuable results requires perception, data collection, and judgment, decision making. This is true for creativity, and it's true for high-performing leaders. Scientists, inventors, and artists, designers, creative leaders don't just sit around brainstorming. They do something with those ideas that they come up with. They produce symphonies, they write novels, they create paintings, inventions, patents, new organizations, new business models, products and processes. Creativity and leadership require essentially a balancing act. Perception and judgment, action and reflection. It's about process and product, doing and being. Now, you may be wondering how you can go about doing this. And if everyone is creative, and creativity requires acting and reflecting, collecting data, and doing something with that information, how do you go about getting in touch with your own creative powers in order to be a more effective leader? Well, the good news is you're lucky. Every one of us is very lucky. We have creative talents, capabilities, and strengths that allow us to collect data, act and reflect, and produce different creative results and contributions. You just need to identify, uncover, and develop those talents, which we're going to do in just a few minutes. First, I would like to give you a little background. The Breakthrough Creativity framework is layered onto Jung's psychological types. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung believed that creative instinct exists in each and every one of us, and in his research, he came to realize that there are patterns to the way people take in, look at the world, take in data, and then make decisions about the data that they see. He determined there were 4 functions: sensing, intuiting, thinking, and feeling, as well as 2 orientations to the world: extroverted and introvert. The combination of the 4 functions with the 2 orientations produced his 8 psychological types. You may be familiar with the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or the MBTI, or as well as HRDQ's Personal Style Inventory, because both are also based on Jung's work. It's important to remember that Jung meant this typology to be a compass. It's not meant to put you in a box or to label you or put you in what he called drawers, but to give you direction on your journey toward greater self-awareness and creativity and higher performance as a leader. Now, when you take Jung's 8 psychological types and combine it with the 8 creative talent, breakthrough creativity approach that we've been talking about, you get the 8 creative talents. 8 different ways we take in and process data that make different creative contributions and produce different creative results as we lead. These creative talents are the adventurer, explorer, navigator, and visionary as the data collecting talents, and the inventor, poet, diplomat, and pilot as the decision-making talents. Before I start describing these talents, I want to make some points. All 8 talents are equally creative. We have access to all of them. All of them are accessible to every single one of us. However, we do develop preferences for one or two of the talents, perhaps several, and we'll go through that in the questions and answers. But they impact our creativity differently. They color how we take in ideas and how we interpret that data. They shape how we see problems, and make decisions, and they fashion our approach to problem-solving, decision-making, and leading. The 8 creative talents, it's important to remember, are tools for greater leadership They're not an end in and of themselves. So, while we have access to all the talents within us, as I said, most people tend to have a favorite data collecting talent and a favorite decision-making talent that comes most naturally to them. So let's start with the data collecting talents and take another poll. Sarah's going to open up the poll, and I'm going to describe each one of these answers. When you are collecting data and generating ideas, which of the following best describes what you prefer above all the others? If I were to ask you, how are you creative as a leader from a data collecting point of view, would you say, let me research facts and details on my own, please? Tell me who, what, where, how, and when? Or would you say, let's generate lots of ideas together? Or would you say, no, I want to go off and ponder this while I go for a walk? You can only select one. Please figure out which one is the one you tend to use most often, the one that comes most naturally to you. I see that we have an interesting mix here of those who prefer. And it looks like we have a lot of folks who prefer both. It's sort of a tie between researching facts and data or generating ideas together. So let's move on and go through the definitions. I seem to have a problem working with these the forward and backward buttons this morning. This afternoon. I'm going to blame it on my cold. So the first talent that I want to cover is the adventurer talent. If you answered the questions with it that you enjoy wanting to know who, what, when, where, and how, you tend to prefer the adventurer talent, which is a skilled improviser. People with this talent tend to be spontaneous, flexible, curious, and fun-loving. You tend to enjoy living in the five senses. You like to see all sorts of details in the shapes, sounds of life, and joy. You take great pleasure out of being on stage, or at least some of the time. And if that's true, then you probably have a lot of adventurer talent in you. As I said, they tend to ask practical questions: who, what, when, where, and how. Their creativity comes out in their quick responses to crises and to the ability to skillfully handle anything that's thrown their way, get past all the obstacles and get ready to act. Firefighters, first responders, basketball players, photographers are all examples of individuals who use this talent. This talent enjoys innovating, using experimentation, and are opportunistic and improvisational when it comes to innovation. Their leadership style will tend towards the operational, tends to be more focused on the present, the here and now, rather than the future. Now, one of the major contributions that Kaiser and Kaplan have made to the practice of leadership development in their versatile leadership book is an appreciation of overusing as well as underusing the strengths. So a possible challenge for those of you who favor this talent is overusing it in its love of life and enjoyment of solving crises that can cause people who favor this talent to get so caught up in the moment that they might forget about getting anything done. They're a lot of fun, but they oftentimes undervalue process and ignore the future. I did want to say that there are a lot of nuances to these talents, but what we're going to focus on today is leadership style and how the talents impact your innovation approach. So, if you are like the adventurer in that you prefer details, but are more private, careful, and thoughtful, and you like to research facts and details on your own, as many of you tend to do, you probably have more navigator talent. We call it the pragmatic adapter. because its creativity comes out in its ability to build on what others have done. This talent's focus on details will provide grounding for a team, ensuring achievement of creative results, and it was a critical component of the creative process. Researchers, impressionist painters, and scientists like Charles Darwin have exhibited use of this talent. This talent will tend to ask questions that are practical, concrete, such as what's been done before, so that they can fine-tune and build on what others have done. The navigator talent will apply facts, experience, and research in a methodical and incremental approach to solving problems and innovating. And don't forget that imitation is a great strategy for innovation, and building on what others have done makes a lot of sense. The leadership style for those with the navigator talent tends to be operational, again focused on the present, and if overusing this talent, a leader could become uncomfortable with uncertainty and overly cautious around risk, which is usually part of anything in creative, and can also not be as open to new ideas as they need to be. So that's the navigator talent. Now, as opposed to the navigator and the adventurer talent who prefer details, the explorer and the visionary talent, which we'll cover in just a minute, look at patterns and concepts. The explorer talent, or with the energetic catalyst talent, loves to generate ideas, loves to brainstorm, can brainstorm at the drop of the hat. This talent is often found in people who are labeled creative, so folks who are full of endless possibilities and are all about new ideas, discovery, change, and opportunities. It's important to remember that this is just one way to be creative. The explorer talent will use a sixth sense to address problems from beyond the five senses, and will search out all sorts of options and alternatives for the near future by asking what would happen if. What are the patterns and concepts that we need to understand? I look back and say, well, this is probably the talent that Walt Disney and other advertising and marketing greats have, and maybe even Virgin Group founder Richard Branson might have this as their favorite talent. Their leadership style tends to be strategic in the sense of looking at the future. And one of the challenges that leaders with the explorer talent need to face is that they're usually able to get projects started, but they're often not interested in sticking around to see them get implemented, which means that creative results may not always be achieved. The explorer talent can also cause leaders to run into trouble by ignoring the facts of reality when its strengths are overused. And the fourth data collecting talent is the visionary talent. Like the explorer, the visionary talent sees patterns and concepts, but they tend to be more private, thoughtful, and are often counterintuitive. So if you entered the poll by saying you get your best and most inventive ideas when you're off on your own, taking a walk, in bed, with your dreams, or in the bath, or in the car, then your favorite talent is probably the visionary talent, which we don't, and that's probably the least favorite of all the group today. The insightful futuristic creativity of this talent comes out in its ability to integrate knowledge across many different areas, to ask bold questions and make unusual connections. As I said, it's counterintuitive. It can have a very counterintuitive vision of the far-off future, like prophets, creators of science fiction, or some strategic planners. The visionary talent will address innovation by asking about long-range objectives and taking a systemic and systematic approach to innovation, asking, for example, what does this mean for the long term? What might be the impact? Leaders with this talent will tend to look for long-term breakthrough innovations, and like the explorer talent, they can also tend to sort of ignore facts and the realities. They may have a big picture for the company, but forget that many people need the small steps to get them to that vision of the future. So, did you find a favorite data collecting talent that sounds like you? If not, we can address it in the questions and answers at the end. And we'll also talk at the end when we have some time for questions and answers about if you have more than one that you think you favor. So we'll get to that. Now, let's move on to the decision-making talents. And Sarah's going to open up another poll here. Remember that I said that to be fully creative, you not only need to come up with ideas, but you also have to do something with them. So what is your favorite approach to making decisions, turning creative ideas into action and getting results? Do you prefer to work with others to get their views to help you make up your mind? Do you instead focus on your own values to guide your decisions? Do you use logic and think out loud to organize your decisions? Or do you develop categories in your mind to guide your decisions? Again, we can only have one, so it's the one you tend to use most. It comes most naturally to you. We're getting, again, a fairly balanced group of people in between the A and the C, wanting to get others involved and using logic to think out loud. So we're pretty much close that one out and move on to the decisions, describing these decisions. The first I want to cover is that if you said you use logic and think out loud to organize your thoughts, then you probably prefer the pilot talent. This is an analytically strategic creativity is great at coming up with new designs and plans. This talent comes in very handy for project managers and planners who need to steer a team working on a new project by setting goals and objectives, asking tough questions, and focusing on improvement and getting things accomplished. This talent's ability to analyze, categorize, and organize helps it achieve creative results as new organizational designs or strategies. It will attack problems with logical critique and play devil's advocate, all of which are extremely important to looking at creative ideas and designs and deciding what needs to be done with them. It will take a structured, logical approach to innovation. Albert Sloan, who reorganized GM almost a century ago, was probably using this talent, as was the designer of Management by Objectives. Their leadership style tends to be what Kaiser and Kaplan call forceful, but is really directing in the sense of giving a point of view, setting direction for people to follow, not forcing them so much, but setting direction. One challenge for individuals favoring this talent is that they can be so eager to get things clearly organized that they're sometimes uncomfortable with the ambiguity that is inherent in innovation and creativity. They want to jump to results, but innovation, creativity often require experimentation and uncertainty around the outcome. Let's see if we can get our voice back here. Now, like the pilot, the inventor talent is also approaches life with a logical, analytical perspective on problems and decisions. But the inventor tends to be objective, detached, and private. Their creativity comes out in their ability to provide unusual frameworks that shift thinking. They're paradigm shifters. And they, but again, a lot of this processing goes on in their heads. Their creative results come out in building categories, conceptual frameworks, mental maps, and models that make everything fit together and that will provide insights that enable discoveries of new solutions. Scientists, architects like Frank Lloyd Wright, philosophers like Ayn Rand would be using this talent when they created their designs and frameworks for better understanding. This talent takes a very logical, analytical approach to problems and innovation, asking questions about the models to use to analyze the challenge and possible solutions. They too, like the pilot, tend to be more forceful leaders, but they are quietly forceful. And the challenge for this talent is that they can often see life and the world in black or white, either or terms. And most creative solutions need a both-and approach. Now, if instead you said you like to get others' views to before you make up your mind, you probably prefer the diplomat talent. And if so, you are a collaborative negotiator who likes working with others to achieve common goals and build a strong team. The diplomat talent will produce creative results that can be seen in the way they deal with political problems that inevitably come up in implementing creative ideas. They're great at selling the solution, working with others to get an innovation or a change adopted. They also provide a safe place for others to share their ideas, and they're going to want to know how a new product or solution will affect users or other people involved. Individuals identified as caring or inspiring leaders tend to use this talent. People like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and Eleanor Roosevelt. When it comes to leading, individuals who prefer the diplomat talent will lean towards the enabling side of this spectrum, building consensus around the possible solution. And their approach to innovation is going to be to involve as many people as possible in coming up with the approach to a new idea or a new solution or a new organization, etc. Their ability to build consensus, while a strong positive in leaders, can also be a challenge when it comes to creative discussions and debates. Conflict, which the diplomat talent usually prefers to shy away from, is an inevitable part of the exploration of many different perspectives. And our fourth decision-making talent is the poet, or the thoughtful counselor. Like the diplomat, they tend to consider personal people and personal values when making any kind of decisions. However, they tend to be more quietly supportive and nurturing. They offer a safe place when it comes to developing creative solutions, and examples of this talent in our everyday life would be people like Anita Roddick, and the founder of The Body Shop, and Tom Chappell, who founded Tom's of Maine, and other socially responsible leaders. Poet talent will generally ask questions about the people involved, how the possible solutions fit in with the company's or the team's values, what's really important. Its concern for people will often cause the team or the leader to pause when considering the impact a change or innovation might have on others. It will want to allow people time to incubate the new ideas. And as I said, it will be quietly enabling as leadership style. Now again, one of the challenges they have in overusing this talent is that they can overlook points of view that clash with strongly held values and ideals. So, did you find a decision-making talent that you prefer? What I'd like to do now is just to take another benchmark to see whether or not we've been able to see any impact of this discussion. So we're opening up another poll to say, and please answer, do you think you're more sure of your creativity than ever before? Do you realize you're much more creative than you first thought? Do you still have a lot to learn, or are you still not sure about your creativity? It's great to see that people realize that many people realize that they are much more creative than they first thought. But then there are some that still have a lot to learn, and that's understandable. And what we want to do is, if you're still not sure, then hold on. What am I doing wrong? Hello. Sarah, are we closing out the poll? Thank you. Okay. If you're still not sure, this is why I developed the 16-item Breakthrough Creativity Profile and Workshop, to help those who need to go into more depth and to identify their talents. Since finding your own creative identity, your creative talents, is so critical to being a high-performing leader in today's world, I might suggest that you purchase an individual participant guide to learn how you are creative and to explore the breakthrough creativity approach in more detail. But I want to go on now to what you can do now that you have a better appreciation of the different creative talents and their results. I'd like to share with you some possible next steps for developing more creative leaders in your organization, or either as a coaching client or as part of a leadership development program. The first is to be sure that your leaders develop an appreciation for their own creative strengths and the contributions and challenges of their favorite creative talents. It's important that everyone recognize that we're all creative and that there are many different ways, no one best way to be creative. The next is to make sure that the organization provides a supportive, motivating culture, making sure that rewards for the different variations in creative contributions are there, that senior leaders are truly open to questioning, and that organizational processes don't, such as too much bureaucracy or a wrong kind of compensation model, don't hamper creativity and innovation. You want to make sure that there are a variety of role models. Leaders who are performing at their creative best don't have to be standout models or highly successful entrepreneurs. They can be ordinary team leaders who have found a new way to work together, a new solution for customers, a new process that saves time. And lastly, if you include, I would urge you definitely to include action learning projects in teams in your leadership development programs, where leaders have to deal with ambiguous situations and have to experiment and work with others with different talents on an action learning team. Speaking of teams, mining the creative potential of a team calls for more than just putting individuals together in a project. For a team's creativity to blossom and to turn great ideas into different and valuable results, a team needs to recognize and honor the different perspectives and creative talents that each member brings to the team. Understanding a team's breakthrough creativity profile, which is the sum of all the talent profiles of the team members, will help the team reach higher levels of creativity. Knowledge of the team's profile can also help the team and its leader develop strategies for dealing with the challenges that a particular mix of talents or lack of talents may present. For example, a team with members who favor the diplomat talent might be averse to conflict, and although they're going to be having great times and they get to know each other very well, they need to be able to get all ideas out on the table and deal with that conflict. Or a team that with predominantly pilot talents might be in a rush to get to results without generating sufficient options. Or a team that favors the navigator talent might be stuck with coming up with great ideas for the future. So understanding the talents can also help the team improve its ability to give honest feedback, because the talents supply an easy, non-confrontational language to talk about challenges in different perspectives. They can also serve as a tool, similar to the bonus 6 hats, to generate new ideas and perspectives. Asking, how would an adventurer see this problem? How would a poet see this problem? Awareness of the team's creative talents can thus help the team break through to more powerful interactions and positive creative results, and allow it to have more fun along the way. I feel so strongly about creativity in leaders and on teams that I've developed profiles and workshops for individuals to identify their favorite talents and a technique for team members to then identify their team profile as well. Next steps. I don't like to leave without giving you a chance to make some plans to do something with the information you've heard. So I'd like us to take a moment, maybe 30 seconds, to reflect. What can you do today or tomorrow, first thing tomorrow, to further develop your creativity as a leader? Just one step that you can take might include developing, really honoring your favorite talent, or trying to access a talent that you don't use very often to get some new perspectives. Or maybe there's something you want to do with your team, or your clients, or your organization. Or within your organization, how might you integrate creativity into your leadership development programs? I wish we had a little bit more time to have you reflect, but I want to give us some time to get to some of the questions. So I just want to sum up today and say that the power of creativity is absolutely awesome. Developing creative confidence can lead to increased ability to handle challenges and can provide you with more resilience, flexibility, and buoyancy for coping with constant change, the challenges that leaders have to face these days. A leader's talents can help him or her weather any storm. Seeing oneself as creative is thus vital for a healthy and productive life, both personally and professionally. Through introducing you to the Breakthrough Creativity Framework and the 8 creative talents, and helping you better understand the many different ways to be creative and to appreciate the impact of creativity on a leader's ability to face challenges, I hope I have given you some valuable new perspectives so you can see the incredibly magical world of creativity with new eyes. So Sarah, I will hand this back to you. For some time, probably we have some time for questions.
All right. Yes, Lynn, thank you so much. That was great. And we do actually have some time for some questions. So attendees, go ahead and send those my way now. And while we wait, let me just share a little bit about the program that is the foundation of today's session. And that is the Breakthrough Creativity Profile. This includes practical tools and 3 workshops combining self-assessment with classroom training to help both individuals and teams improve their creative problem-solving skills, develop the ability to be inventive, become more productive, and achieve their creative best. And then for a limited time, we are running 30% off on any Breakthrough Creativity product. And then for those interested, we are doing a very short product review after this session, so we always invite you to stick around after. And we are getting a number of questions coming in, so I'm just going to jump right in. And it looks like our first question is coming from Sylvia. What if I prefer all the talents? Is that a problem?
It's not a problem as long as you understand which talent you are using and which is the most appropriate for the moment. I have found one of the things that differ between or is specific to the Breakthrough Creativity Profile is that it is situational. So as you develop your skills as a leader, as you gain more experience, as you've had more training, you recognize how important it is to use all 8 talents depending upon who you're working with or what the problem is. The challenge is making sure that 2 things. One is that you are accessing, actually there are 3. The first is making sure you're aware and consciously aware of which talent you are accessing and making sure it's the appropriate talent for the moment. The second is not trying to access all of them when you're needing to make a quick decision, because then you could easily spend time spinning your wheels because you're trying to see everything from all the different perspectives. And the third, and probably one of the more important, is when you're working as a leader, it's important that your team knows how to deal with you and how you want to deal with them. So if you are willy-nilly kind of using all the talents, and people are never going to quite be able to figure you out. And I don't think that necessarily is the best way for others for building a team. So yes, it's important to be able to access all the talents when you need them. It's just that you need to be very conscious of consequences.
All right, great, thank you. And it looks like our next question is coming from Marla. How can a person that is an introvert harness their creativity?
That's a great question. It's important that a person realize that they have inside themselves both introverted and extroverted talents. So we're not stuck in one way of dealing with life. That being said, one of the challenges, if you prefer, say, both of your high preference talents are introverted talents, say you're a poet and a navigator, or a visionary and an inventor, that can cause some problems for you in two ways. One is that you're sometimes unwilling to share your thoughts, ideas, etc. with the rest of the world because they are private to you and you're not sure that other people are going to appreciate them or whatever. But so one is recognizing that other people should hear your ideas, that they have value, that's very important that you get them out there. And now I'm blanking on the second reason. So I think that what we'll follow up with when that comes back to me, the second reason, we'll follow up with an email on that. But I think the most important thing is to recognize that it's important that you share your ideas with others, that you don't be afraid to share your ideas, that it's important also to get the team to spend some time reflecting the way you tend to do most and to be more thoughtful. So getting the team to say, hold on, it's time to reflect or to incubate on that problem. Let's not go jumping to any conclusions or just dealing with what comes up right at the moment. I think we need to spend some time reflecting on that. So I think recognizing the value of being having introverted talents as your favorite talent is really important. I hope that answers Marla's question.
All right, perfect, yes. And looks like our next question is coming from Phil. How does the right brain and left brain theory of creativity fit into this?
I'm so glad Phil asked that question. It's something that that annoys me no end. First of all, the right and left brain theory of creativity has not been proven to be valid. Recent neuroscientific studies have shown that in order for anyone to come up with ideas, with new and creative ideas, you need the full brain. So you need both right and left. You need your whole brain working to come up with new ideas. This right and left brain theory is something that was kind of simplistically developed. I know I'm sounding judgmental and I should be more open to it, but the problem I have with that theory is that many of us, many of us are what they would label left brain, and that is, the analytical, logical side to all of us, and we need that in order to come up with new and different and valuable results. If we're always just generating ideas, which is not necessarily just what right brain people do, or what that theory says they do, we're never going to get anything done. First of all, you need the whole brain to produce different and valuable results. That's number one. And number two is there does not seem, with recent neuroscientific studies showing that the whole brain is needed to generate ideas and do something with them, that it's basically debunking that, the right and left brain theory.
All right, wonderful. And it looks like our next question is coming from Sadie. What tools and techniques work best with each talent?
Great question, Sadie. There are I think it's very important to recognize that no one tool is going to work for all 8 talents. And so I would suggest that you make sure that you are using a lot of different talents. For example, with people who prefer introverted talents, brain writing might be a better tool than brainstorming. There are a lot of tools that are available to you, and I would suggest that there are 2 books that are really valuable, and they're both by Michael Michalko. One is called Thinker Toys, and the other is his other book, and Cracking Creativity. Both of them are chock full with many different tools that can appeal to the different talents.
All right, great. Thanks so much. I think we probably just have time for one more question. And it looks like that one is coming from Charlie. What other obstacles can get in our way?
Good question, too. There are a lot of challenges to being more creative. The first step is obviously getting in touch with and recognizing and appreciating your own favorite talents. The second is recognizing when those talents can get in the way. The third is recognizing that sometimes if you're very used to using all of your favorite talents, accessing some of the talents that you don't use very much is also another way to help you. Now, things that can get in the way are some emotional issues of fear of failure, fear of looking foolish. A lot of us are afraid to float ideas because we think someone's going to laugh at us. So this fear of failure and fear of appearing foolish is, these emotional issues can be that way. Organizational issues can also get in the way. That's a topic for a whole nother webinar. Your supervisors' skills and their willingness to be open to new ideas. Organizational culture can be a problem, and also compensation systems can be a problem, and performance evaluation systems can be a problem. So there are many obstacles, but I maintain that it is our own personal issues that get in the way much more so than organizational issues. And so it's us who are keeping ourselves in our box as opposed to the organization trying to put us in a box.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Those are some great questions. And if we did not get time to answer your question today, we will be following up with an email next week with Lynne's answered questions. So, Lynne, would you just like to add any final thoughts before I go ahead and wrap this up for today?
Well, I just want to thank you all for attending. Thanks everyone, and I hope you have a creative day. And if there are any veterans on the call, thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you so much. And again, a big thanks to our sponsors, the Supervisory Skills Questionnaire. And if your organization is interested in sponsoring an HRDQ-U webinar, you can go ahead and reach out to me. My email is sschaefer@hrdq.com. And then for those interested, you can go ahead and stay on the line. Sarah Montgomery, one of our management team, is going to share a little bit more about the Breakthrough Creativity Profile.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It is always inspiring to hear Lynne speak on creativity. Her assessment gave me a lot of personal insight into my own creativity and really challenged my views on the concept. So I'm really happy to speak more about her profile today. The Breakthrough Creativity Profile is the foundation of today's webinar, as Sarah has mentioned, And it's chock full of practical tools. There's 3 workshops and loads of insight. And the second edition, what it does is it combines a self-assessment with a classroom training to help both individuals and teams improve their creative problem-solving skills, develop the ability to be innovative, become more productive, and achieve